This is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to talk about Ethereum 2.0 exposed. If you currently own Ethereum or you're thinking about buying it, and you want to know how the move to Ethereum 2.0, the move to proof of stake, is going to affect your investment, it's really important that you watch this video and watch it all the way to the end. I think you'll be shocked by where all of this is heading. In order to understand this move, we have to review very briefly what consensus mechanisms are. A consensus mechanism is just a way for the network to decide on its own state in a decentralized manner. Put more simply, how do you know who owns what? If I have 10 Bitcoin and you have 5 Bitcoin and I send you 2 Bitcoin, who keeps track of the fact that I now have only 8 Bitcoin and you have 7 Bitcoin? Well, in the traditional financial system, if you're doing this using dollars and you're using Wells Fargo or PayPal or a centralized exchange, a centralized system like one of these, like a bank, the centralized authority will keep track of account balances. If I send you $10,000, they'll debit my account $10,000 and they'll credit your account $10,000. And we rely on trusted centralized authorities in order to do this. Now, Satoshi's innovation, Satoshi Nakamoto's innovation, is to find a way to do this for a decentralized system where there's no centralized party in charge. And what Satoshi used, he used something called proof of work, where you have Bitcoin miners and they actually have to burn electricity in order to find the magic number. And there's no shortcut to this. They have to actually run the algorithm and burn a lot of electricity to prove that they have done the work. This is analogous to gold mining, where you also have to expend energy to mine and to store gold. And so Bitcoin uses this. Ethereum has used it since its inception, but now Ethereum is transitioning to a different consensus mechanism called proof of stake. And it's going to get rid of all the miners. It's going to replace them with validators. This is what's happening under Ethereum 2.0. But again, proof of work, proof of stake, they're both consensus mechanisms. How do you decide who owns what on the network? And how do you ensure that no one cheats and spends the same coins twice? This is the double spending problem. Now, if it's Wells Fargo will make sure that you can't spend that same $10,000 twice or send it twice. But under a decentralized network, you need a consensus mechanism like proof of work or proof of stake. So how does proof of stake work? Well, Ethereum, as I said, is going to get rid of the miners that do proof of work, and it's going to replace them with validators. It has a parallel chain where this is already happening, but eventually the entire network will move to proof of stake. To become a validator, and you can do this today, in fact, to become a validator under this new proof of stake system for Ethereum 2.0, you will need to run an Ethereum 2.0 node. This is another way of saying becoming a validator. And in order to do this, because this is proof of stake, you are going to need to put up at least 32 ETH. You're going to need to stake that 32 ETH. And this is sort of like a security deposit that is meant to keep you honest as a validator, because you will be validating transactions and blocks on the blockchain. If you're running an Ethereum 2.0 node and it goes offline for too long, you get penalized and you lose some ETH. This is important because they want to have as many nodes as possible staying online to make sure that the system stays decentralized. If you do something malicious and you try to break the rules as a validator, let's say you vote, you do 2 votes instead of 1, and one of your votes contradicts the other, or you try to enforce non-consensus rules, you get slashed. This is the slang or the term of art for the fact that you cheated, and you lose some more ETH. If you do something really badly, they can take away a lot of your ETH. This system does it. The algorithm does it. So as I said, you can think of the 32 ETH that you need to stake to become a validator as a sort of security deposit that keeps you honest as a validator. This is sort of the game theory behind it. Now, validators are chosen by the ETH algorithm to verify transaction. They're chosen somewhat randomly, but there's a bias or a weighting towards giving preference to those validators that have more ETH and that have been staking it for the longest period of time. So under proof of stake, the more coins you have, the more Ethereum you have, the more influence you have under this system. If you were awarded ETH as part of the 70% premine, you have an inherent advantage. This is one of the really dirty things about Ethereum is they had this initial premine where huge amounts were given to insiders like VCs and developers and lead developers like Vitalik Buterin. So I would suggest that insiders are moving ETH to Ethereum 2.0 in order to reward themselves, not because they care about the environment or energy usage. There's lots of things in the world that use a lot of energy. Internet uses a lot of energy. Your washing machine and dryer use a lot of energy. But we accept these trade-offs because they are providing a useful service. And no one is suggesting that we stop using washers and dryers because they use a lot of electricity. And in fact, they use more electricity than the Bitcoin network does. So the problem with this is that you have all these insiders, and when they move Ethereum to a 2.0 to a proof of stake system, these very wealthy people will just get richer. Under a proof of stake system, you get richer just by sitting there. All you need to do is stake your ETH, and you earn interest on it. There's no competition. There's no race to create the next block, as there is with a proof of work system like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is ultra-capitalist. It's ultra-competitive. And we all know that free markets and this sort of dynamism is what creates the most innovation. Whereas proof of stake, the richer you are, the higher the probability that you'll get chosen to validate the next block. And so it's a completely different system. Proof of work, highly competitive, as we said, and it rewards innovation. If you can design a faster chip for your ASIC, for your specialized mining machine, if you can locate a cheaper form of energy, maybe a stranded form of energy or some natural gas that's being vented into the atmosphere and thus creating more greenhouse effects, you can be rewarded for this. Bitcoin's proof of work rewards innovation. Proof of stake rewards rich people just sitting there getting richer, especially people who participated in the pre-mine. So I'll link to both of these videos, Ethereum's Dirty History, Ethereum's Dirty History Part 2. But this is not where I'm going with this video. But while we're here, I will ask you, hit that subscribe and like button if you're finding this video helpful so far. So there's a bigger problem with the move to proof of stake in Ethereum 2.0. As we said, to run a full node, to become a validator on Ethereum 2.0, you need to stake at least 32 ETH. Now, ETH have become quite expensive. Each one, as I'm recording this, is trading for about $3,400. So just to get in the game here, you need $109,000. By contrast, for Bitcoin miners, you can buy a Bitcoin miner for somewhere between $3,000 to $20,000 per ASIC. Now, again, Bitcoin miners don't control the network. We're going to talk about that later, but I just wanted to provide that contrast here. So this is a system that inherently rewards people who have more than 100K lying around. In the US, the average net worth is extremely low. Most people don't have this sort of money lying around. But what if you don't have this kind of money lying around? What are you going to do if you still want to become an ETH validator? Well, Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase, if you trust this guy, has a solution for you. You can now earn staking rewards by just leaving your Ethereum with Coinbase. And I'll link to both of these articles. Here's the questions about it. And this confirms the chance that a node is being chosen to validate the next block is proportional to the number of tokens being staked. In other words, the richer you are, the higher the probability that you will get to validate the next block. So Coinbase, on the surface, this seems like a cool thing. Coinbase will pool ETH from all its customers, and it will use this to run a validator, a full node or validator. And if you don't have 32 ETH, this is one way you can participate in this new proof of stake system. Coinbase itself will collect these staking rewards because it's running the validators. It will charge a 25% fee. If you look up under terms and conditions, you can see that number. And then it'll distribute the rest of the money to its customers. So this is a little bit like having a savings account where you earn interest. You have to trust Coinbase to hold your coins and do the right thing and not have them be hacked. But assuming it does that, you can participate in proof of stake, and you don't need that 32 ETH to become a validator. So this looks fairly like it's democratizing proof of stake. But there's a problem. There are a couple of problems. The first one is a fairly small problem, but it is still a regulatory problem. You are putting up money, or Coinbase is putting up money, and you're earning interest on it. And this really sounds like something that falls under banking regulations or behaves like a security. Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC, has been talking about this in the past few weeks, and he is coming after Coinbase, he's coming after stablecoins, and he's most certainly coming after proof of stake, which looks like a savings account. It looks like something that falls under banking regulations. Maybe you'll say, well, this isn't earning interest and it's not going to be regulated. Well, one problem is that Vitalik Buterin himself has repeatedly referred to this proof of stake as earning interest. He talks about it in this article, which I'll link to, where he talks about how you're earning interest and what the various interest rates are going to be. So this will be used by regulators against Ethereum. But that's not the major problem that I want to talk about. There's a much bigger problem, and that is that the end state of a proof of stake system is a high degree of centralization. So with Ethereum, you already have this problem that we talked about where you have all these insiders who got ETH in the unfair 70% premine. These are coins that were distributed before Ethereum launched to the public. But now you have something even worse. Proof of work at least kept people honest. It made it a very competitive ecosystem with Ethereum miners. But now you have a centralizing force that's being driven by proof of stake, by the transition from proof of work to proof of stake. So what's going to happen, and we saw this with these Coinbase headlines, is that all the big regulated exchanges, Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, Binance, etc., are going to become huge validators under Ethereum 2.0. And this is something they really like about proof of stake. So they're going to tell you, oh, proof of work, it's really bad for the environment, it burns all this energy. But of course, they are talking their own book because they will hugely benefit from people staking their coins with them. They'll be pooling this ETH, and so you'll have this really concentrated holdings of ETH among the regulated exchanges, and they will be running validators. Because they have so many coins, they will be chosen very often to validate the block. So they'll have tremendous power under this new system. Of course, they're in favor of Ethereum 2.0 for this reason. Also, when an Ethereum ETF is finally approved, they will also be a huge holder of ETH and will become, because they will have so many coins, they will also run a validating node or validating nodes or full nodes, and they'll become hugely influential along with the exchanges. Remember, the more ETH you have, the more coins you have, and the longer that you've been staking it, the higher the probability that you'll be chosen by the algorithm to validate the next block. So under the move to proof of stake, we're going to have an ecosystem that is largely controlled by regulated exchanges and by Ethereum ETFs. Isn't this what cryptocurrency is trying to move away from, though? We're trying to create a fairer, less centralized, less fragile new financial system. Ethereum was unfair from the beginning because of this dirty premine, which Bitcoin did not have. What happened with Bitcoin? People say there was a premine, but there wasn't. Satoshi released the white paper at the beginning. Anyone could have mined Bitcoin with him. A bunch of people did. And the real difference as well, of course, is that Satoshi has never sold any Bitcoin. Vitalik has dumped something like 25 or 30% of his Ethereum, whereas Satoshi has disappeared. He's a very benevolent creator. The only reason Satoshi was mining coins to begin with was to secure the network because there were no other Bitcoin miners out there. And even though he accumulated something like 1 million Bitcoin by doing this, he has never spent or sent any of them. So this is quite different from a premine where you had all these VCs and all these insiders awarding themselves a huge amount of coins. In fact, 70% of the circulating supply at the beginning. But this move to proof of stake makes things much worse, makes things much more centralized. The ETFs and the regulated exchanges are going to have all this power as validators. Now, if centralized exchanges and ETFs control the Ethereum network because they have all this influence as validators, if you're a government, whether a hostile government or a government who just wants to co-opt this currency, all you need to do to control the space is to exert regulatory pressure on these exchanges and ETFs, and they will need to comply as regulated entities. This is the end state of Ethereum's move to Ethereum 2.0. You end up with a captured currency that's mainly controlled by the exchanges and by the ETFs, and at the top is controlled by regulators. And as such, it's a completely centralized system that can be controlled by the government. Now let's contrast this to how you run a full node under Bitcoin. Under Bitcoin, you can buy a Raspberry Pi for $100 or $150, whatever they cost. You can download the Bitcoin Core software for free, and you're up and running. You could also use just an old laptop to do this because the Bitcoin community has consciously kept the blockchain small enough that anyone can hold it on their computer. So as a result, we have these nodes, Bitcoin full nodes spread all over the world. They're in Africa, they're in Central America, they're in Asia, they're in Europe and North America. And you only need an old laptop or a Raspberry Pi to run the Bitcoin Core software. This is the software that contains the consensus rules. Now, under proof of work, there's no way to collude or to cheat. This is the Bitcoin proof of work system. You have to show that you've done the work by burning electricity. And it's very important to note here this distinction between Bitcoin miners who run the proof of work algorithm and secure the network and Bitcoin full nodes. Under Ethereum 2.0, you kind of have a merging of validators and nodes. They become the same thing, or miners and nodes. Under Bitcoin, you have mining, and then you have full nodes. The Bitcoin miners do not control the network. The Bitcoin full nodes do. The Bitcoin full nodes run the Bitcoin Core software, and they enforce the rules. If a miner tries to create a fraudulent block or does a double spending attack that doesn't follow the consensus rules, it will be rejected by full nodes on the network. If a bunch of miners get together and try to do a 51% attack, the full nodes will choose to route around this as well. It's also very difficult to do a 51% attack because you have to buy all of these ASICs. Whereas to do it with Ethereum, you just have to accumulate. A lot of ETH, and if you're an insider from the 70% premine, you probably already have a lot of ETH, and then you can collude with other beneficiaries of the 70% premine. By contrast, the Bitcoin network is enforced by the consensus rules are enforced by the full nodes. Anyone in any country can run a full node because we've kept the blockchain small enough. And this ensures true decentralization rather than rule by the rich or rule by insiders. This move to proof of stake is going to be a disaster for Ethereum. It will become a captured currency. And so those of you who are going to be long-term holders of it really need to take this into account. There are a bunch of articles out there you can see that explain to you how difficult it is to run an Ethereum 2.0 node and all the things that can go wrong, and they sell their services in the process. Again, to do this with Bitcoin, you just need an old laptop and you can download the software. It's actually very difficult to become a validator or a node, which are basically the same things under Ethereum 2.0. And so you have centralized companies that help you do this. All Nodes is one, and they're currently running almost 5,000 validator nodes already. And these are, again, controlled by a single corporation. And if the government tells them to stop doing this, they have to stop doing it. Likewise, Infura has been the traditional backbone for Ethereum. It runs on AWS. And so to shut down Ethereum in its current state, all you need to do is make a phone call to Infura, make a phone call to Amazon Web Services. And when Infura goes down, Ethereum goes down, the exchanges are unable to process withdrawals. This is the kind of centralized system that Ethereum currently runs after, and it's going to get much, much worse when Ethereum moves to a proof-of-stake system and is largely controlled by the large crypto exchanges and people like Brian Armstrong and the coming Ethereum ETFs. This is the worst form of money. It recreates existing fiat financial system where the printing press and the rules are controlled by the bankers and the insiders. And so as such, the move to proof of stake, the move to Ethereum 2.0 is a betrayal of the promises of a new financial system and a new decentralized financial system. And it's being sold under the guidelines of protecting the environment and ESG and using less energy, when in fact what you're doing is you're just giving more power to the insiders in Ethereum. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comments section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.